Hello to all the LinkCxO viewers. Once again, we are back with one more eclectic content for all of you. Today, I have one more distinguished guest amongst us, absolute professional who has been in the industry veteran from close to 2+ decades. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and welcome Sameer Madan, who is at Intact India as their Chief of Finance, Technology and Operations, CFTO. That's a new title we keep learning every possible day for the India Global Capability Center. Prior to that, he had almost 2 decades of work experience with Agilent Technology, where he served as director in the country controlship organization, leading teams responsible for USGAAP and global subsidiary compliance and reporting. Without much delay, sir, a very warm welcome to our podcast series.
Thank you, Vinay, and looking forward to it.
Sir, as leaders and an industry veterans, I'm sure at your level you would have gone through a lot of leadership changes, a lot of strategy that you would have been part of. From a strategy and leadership perspective, how do you balance long-term vision with short-term pressures?
See, that's a very interesting question. And to set the context, let me give you an analogy. Earlier, there were also two type of companies, but you were either big or small. Now also there are two type of companies, but you are either fast or slow. The paradigm has shifted. And God
Yes.
forbid if you're large and slow. So speed is a game changer. Even if you have to fail fast. So strategy is no longer a 5-year plan or a 3-year plan or even a 1-year plan. Business models are getting disrupted probably every day. I don't know how many of the viewers would know that the most valued company on the Brazilian stock exchange is a bank, and it's a pretty
Mhm.
big bank. But the unique feature, Vinay, of this bank is it doesn't even have a single physical branch. So
Interesting.
the cost to income ratio of this bank is 11% compared to the high 40s which banks in India have. So the business models are getting disrupted. So strategy, when you kind of look at it end to end, is a long term thing in the past, but no more now. No more now. So you have to be aware of what's going around in your company, then in the industry, then in the country where you operate, then the region, and then the overall world.
Yes.
So I would say that make sure that you are looking at it from a 360-degree angle, from an outside in perspective, and not just by the targets which you've set for yourself. And strategy should be revisited at least every quarter because the business model itself has gotten disrupted.
I completely agree with you, sir. Continuing with on that thought, how has your leadership style evolved over time?
See, I've been in the industry for now more than 31 years. I did my chartered accountancy in 94. Out there, the career was okay, you study and then for the next 35 years, you're done with it. But you start with being a subject matter expert in your own field. Then you realize that no, the interlinkages are the key. You may be a subject matter expert, let's say in taxation, finance, accounting, marketing, sales, but those watertight boundaries have been broken a long time back. So, as a CFO, I'm also a sales guy because the sales guy is doing what? He's going and selling the product or the service to an end customer, but then
Yes.
there is pricing associated with it, the terms and conditions, credit period, exclusivity contract, how are we doing vis-a-vis a competition, is it market skimming, is it farming versus hunting?
Hmm.
So if it's farming, then I may not be that aggressive in pricing. But if it's hunting, which means I'm kind of getting a new account from that for competition, then I'm willing to kind of play the different game. So my style also has kind of evolved over a period of time as I have seen the end-to-end business spectrum speaking with people. For example, I'll give you that I normally don't have lunch with finance employees or technology employees. I would rather go and have lunch with HR, with sales, with my production folks, with my supply chain guys, maybe with a vendor to understand where is a bottleneck. My job as the chief finance officer and technology as well is to predict the future. In future, I will only know if I am aware of what the other folks in my company and my ecosystem, which is my vendors, are facing as a challenge and how can I address them. So
Yeah.
it's evolved. It's not just bookkeeping, accounting, finance. It's predicting the future. And future can only be predicted if my sales guy tells me not only which order he's won, but even more importantly, which order did he lose and why.
Yes.
So in a meeting, I would only spend, say, 15% or 20% of the time about orders we won. Balance is the orders we lost and why, and what can we do about it.
Very well said, sir. Farming, hunting, quarterly strategies, and in a very agile world in terms of decision making, what is it that one decision in your illustrious career which has perhaps you like to talk about? What was one decision which made a great impact?
See, the decision which makes an impact is always doing the balancing act between people and the metrics.
Yes.
Now, unfortunately, if you work for a listed company, you're driven by your stakeholders.
Yes.
And the stakeholders have become global. Earlier, if I rewind 30 years back, there were hardly MNCs in India, and you were comparing yourself with industries only in India. So out there, the stakeholders were fine with relatively a different set of metrics. Now, the example I gave you of this Brazilian bank, by the way, the name of this bank is Nubank, and you can go and check their financials. You got to kind of compare your financials with a global set of best-in-class metrics, and only then can you think of your strategy, and then you have to take your decisions. Doing the balancing act between the people side and achieving those metrics time and again has been a difficult task. And my learnings from that is that business cycles will change. Now, you take a certain set of decisions when the business cycles are not good, but then you reverse at the moment the tide turns, which means you go in hiring, in IT spends, in rental expansion. So make sure that you're kind of doing a balancing act always. Not to overinvest, not to overcommit. Try and see that the business model should survive. Speak with HR, draw up a compensation model which has a reasonable portion of variable pay because that's what saves you. So it's better to have that portion as a higher in terms of your overall employee value proposition than get into a scenario where you have to do restructuring. So balancing the people side and the metric side is always a tough thing. Folks in India were not used to it, but the last 10, 12 years have taught us this even in India. And this is something which I would recommend all the folks who are joining their careers to be ready with.
Very well put your thoughts across, sir, on this. From a growth and innovation point of view, where do you see the biggest untapped opportunity in your domain, in your market?
So in my market, what I would say is various emerging technologies are up for grabs.
Yes.
Don't go with just the headlines. I mean, let's take artificial intelligence, or I call it augmented intelligence, because at the end of the day, my neck is on the line, whichever technology I use, whether it's a technology or whatever it is left in my head as my gray cells, use the technology. It could be augmented intelligence, for example, how to predict, because the baseline has to be something which is more than what your competition would do. Keep a certain element of, I won't use the word buffer, but keep a element of a comfort zone before you tell the street as to what your targets would be. Make sure that you have a balanced score. So as a finance leader, it's my job to make every employee as an extended finance employee. So give them the tools through technology, whether it's augmented intelligence, whether it's standard reporting through your kind of ERPs, be it HANA and a Brewer report or a HANA report from S4, so that they themselves can see and use technology to reflect the decision which they are about to take as to its impact on the financials. So use technology which we use. Normally, finance guys use technology quite well to be modeling, predictive forecasting, to do some kind of a trend analysis, correlation, but they don't pass on that information through the tools available to the rest of the fraternity. So use the technology which you're using, because finance guys, technology should be pushed down to the last man. For example, when a sales guy gives a certain discount, does he know what is going to impact my bottom line? What is going to impact my cash flow?
Yes.
Is the same price for a net 30 a better deal, or a slightly discounted price with a net 5 days deal. Because a 30-day, what is my average cost of capital? If I'm recovering my sale 23 days in advance, I
Yeah.
can pass on a little bit of the discount. So educating them through the technology which I use is a mission. And as I said, my job is to convert every non-finance employee to an extended finance employee. Because finance is the backbone. How many people understand that? Not many. Not many.
You truly are a chartered accountant where you want all colleagues to become mini CAs. So, and AI also stands for two favorite brands of yours, Agilent and Intact. So continuing
Exactly.
with our series, how do you foster innovation without losing focus?
So again, I'll use the same example, which is the balance scorecard. So
Yes.
for example, HR and their balance scorecard should have a metric that, okay, I have a hiring cost,
Yeah.
right? That's the normal one which stops. But break it down further. And DuPont is a company which introduced the concept of balance scorecards all over the world.
Yes. Yes.
So, for example, in the hiring cost, take away the roles you filled in from internal referral because the cost is much lower. Take away the role of internal promotions which you've used. So, the same metric sliced and diced into different formats tells you how good, bad, or ugly you are. And then you start looking at how do I improve it. And
Yes.
that's where innovation comes. The example I gave you, the sales guy should talk more about the deals he or she lost. And is it because of a product innovation quotient? Competitor had a better product at a better
Right.
price. So when you have data, once you have this data, then I think innovation follows. That's not an issue. But innovation won't have unless and until there is a data which is telling you a story. So the data has to be converted into a story. The story has to be disseminated across every function, be it sales, be it support, be it production, be it supply chain. Let the data do the talking. So once you have the balanced scorecard, it tells you where you stand. And that's the beginning of innovation.
Wow, we have a very data-led CFTO now, was completely backing on numbers. So, from a culture and people perspective, what is it that build and maintain a culture as the company scales? What's your thoughts or comments on it?
See, culture is what you wear as a badge every day, which means how do you lead by your own example? Culture is not something which is put on PowerPoint slides. It's not something which the top leadership decides and communicates it in a webcast or a town hall or whatever you want to call it. The problem with every company, when there is a tone at the top, there is clutter at the bottom, and there is the
Yeah.
mood of the middle. If all three are in sync, culture is great. But it's easier said than done. The tone from the top is clear. The stakeholders, your shareholders, blah, 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 your competitors tell you what you're supposed to do. You don't have too much of a choice because in today's world, there is cutthroat competition. For every open AI, there is a DeepSeek or whatever else.
Yes.
So the tone from the top is quite clear. The problem is managing the clutter at the bottom
Yes.
through the mood of the middle.
True. True.
And the mood of the middle is your layer or the pivot, which you have to use so the culture disseminates right down below. So making sure that, as I said, have lunch or a coffee with not your own function so that you understand what you have set as a tone from the top. Is it
Yeah.
understood in the same language? Sometimes it is as bad as the number is the same, but the currency is different. I'll just give you an analogy.
Got it.
So culture you have to drive and watch right from probably the security guard when you enter your office
Yes.
to your entry level employee and then you. Are we talking the same language? Is the metric clean? Is the balance scorecard telling the right picture? Are you only talking about how good you are? As I said, the sales guy, the conversation I really look forward is tell me why did you lose a deal? So that's what will drive the culture. It's a very, very fluid thing and you have to do it 24 by 7.
And sir, in your illustrious career of 3 decades plus, what's one hiring mistake you'll perhaps not make again?
So I would say a mistake, but how the hiring landscape has evolved is now we should hire for will, not for skill. Whereas we've been born and brought up with take the most skilled guy. Skill is not permanent, will is. Skill I can teach you.
Yeah.
For example, in Intact, the way of accounting is different than the way of accounting in Agilent versus GE versus ABC versus XYZ. So that I can teach you. But if you don't have the right will, then there is an issue. Hiring to kind of make sure that I am able to see the potential and not just his ability to do the current job.
Got
And
it.
out here, I'll bring another nuance. There's a big nuance now in terms of work from home versus coming to office. Work from home is fabulous if you are wanting to only do your current role. The leaders in your company know your potential. That is only possible if you come to office,
True.
if you speak up, if you get in a viewpoint which probably was missed by the leadership, and that happens. The leadership can't be a be all and end all of the world, right?
Yes.
Sometimes they have to be told that this is not something which is in line with what our competition is doing. So hiring for will, for ensuring that somebody is taking a bet on you, and some bets will not pay off. Get only a 60 or a 65% ready person. Because if you get a 80% ready person, the costs would be high, the expectations would be high, it will not be easy for you to retain somebody. So go with a 60-65% ready person, help that person, handhold them, so that, both of us have skin in the game.
So if there's a will, there is a skill, and we also have some tough decision making. So how do you handle situations where data conflicts with intuition or gut?
Very pertinent question. So, data or a trend is your friend, but it's heavily loaded towards the past.
Hmm.
So, data is what? I mean, it's the past data, right? I mean, it
Yes,
doesn't tell
yes.
you how the future will behold. I'll give you another example. So, companies have moved towards doing the first pass forecasting for the next year, the budgeting, completely through tools, including some of them through generative AI models.
Hmm.
So what it does it, for example, that company A where you're working for has 10 years of data. That okay, you grew by this percent in this year. But then you put an additional metrics. Okay, if company A grew by 10%, what was the growth of India's GDP? If it was 7, then it's approximately a multiple of 1.3. You pick up your top 100 customers. What did their top line grow, assuming they're listed, versus your growth? Take the multiple. So with data, you come up with what the projection is. But then at the end of the day, if you feel that there is going to be a war
Hmm.
and the GDP is going to slow down, you want to taper it. You want to taper it. You have to see what are the products coming towards end of the life. Is there a major competitor which is going to threaten your market share, which is a disruptor?
Got it.
So data, you have to marry with intuition. Now, sometimes intuition should be as high as 65, 70%. Sometimes it should be as low as 15%. It's a risky business. But as I said in the earlier part, that you have to predict the future. Data is one very, very important tool. It's like history, right? And
Yes.
people say history repeats itself. But now, to some extent, history has become less important. Geography has become more important as to what's happening in geopolitics.
That's true.
So
Yeah.
there's no easy answer, unfortunately. I would say go with your gut, with back with data.
Go with the gut and backed with data. Perfect answer, sir. And from a business and execution perspective, how do you stay aligned across different departments? You briefly mentioned about how interacting with the HR teams or over lunch or coffee. What else are the initiatives that you have taken, which we can also perhaps imbibe, staying aligned with different departments?
So as I said, balanced scorecard which gets converted into numbers and
Hmm.
telling them how their decisions impact the financials, and then financials impact your bonus, which is your variable pay. So explaining to them the logic is something which I feel really, really deciphers for them as to what they should do,
Yeah.
and not think that there is a big bang budget which the finance guy holds and he releases the budget only for his or her favorites. So again, data. But the other thing is also to kind of teach them or educate them as to what is happening in the competition space, what is happening in the economy, making sure that you encourage rotations, a fresh set of eyes. So, a finance guy going in for, let's say, a sales role, because I think, a finance guy understands the company very well. So, it's worth sending one or two folks to go and do the selling part. And then you can come back after a year. A very good company which uses a program called rounding up. So, for 1 year, you get to choose which role you want to do, and just in case it doesn't work out, you can come back to your original role.
Got it. Truly, truly a finance professional speaking on this.
Yeah, so collaboration can be done through various means, but you have to go and speak to everybody outside of your function. Don't be inward looking.
So, coming to my next segment on industry and future outlook, how is your company preparing for any kind of uncertainty? What is the contingency plan?
The company where I work currently, I recently joined, is the GCC. So we are now helping the parent company to become more agile, to kind of use the time difference to our advantage, to make sure that we are adding value and not just being a cost arbitrage, marrying the various support functions like finance with IT, predictive modeling, to do actuarial, help the overall company. And that's what every company should do. If you're a GCC, value to the parent company from perspective of either top line or bottom line. If you are a standalone independent company with an independent P&L in India, look at your competition. Make sure that you're aware of a bank called Nubank and not have so many branches. And in your annual report and your AGM say, oh, I have X thousand branches in India. Does it really help? There is a silent operator who comes and has a zero physical branch. Now, do you really need a branch? I don't think so. Once you have a branch, and I'll give you an example of banking. If you have a branch and you have a deposit, then you are almost forced to give a loan because otherwise there'll be asset liability mismatch. You have a
Yes.
deposit for which you're paying interest.
Yeah.
And then you may choose not so creditworthy customer to give that loan. Whereas that bank will choose the most creditworthy customers and then may borrow money from a corporate deposit or from the central bank, maybe at a slighter, when he's sure that he's not giving a loan to some not so creditworthy customer. Banking has been redefined. In fact, Bill Gates, I think in the mid or late 90s, had a statement: banking is a must, banks are not. Now, have you recognized at least the business model has changed? So tomorrow, if there is a disruptor in India, with the rentals being so high, you look at Mumbai. Are you based
Yes.
out of Mumbai?
I'm in Bangalore, sir.
Okay, you're in Bangalore. Bangalore rentals are also not too far away from Mumbai. So the rentals in India are way too high. So can you survive? Can your business model survive? So those are aspects you should always keep in mind. Business models are changing super fast.
My next segment is more from assets, liability, and likability. We would like to know how do you manage stress and avoid burnout?
This is relatively speaking a newer concept. When I was doing my career, we had never heard of this. So I would say that decide what you want. If you want to go to the top, there will be an element one of loneliness. So improve your emotional quotient. The top, it's very lonely. It's very lonely. Second, there will be times when you will have to have 14-hour work days for 10 consecutive days.
Yes.
Third, I would say if you have your balance scorecard set up correctly, they'll give you early warning signs.
Hmm.
And last, I would say choose your team wisely. Don't always choose folks who have the same strengths as you have. So
Bring
make
in
it a more
diversity.
complementary. A complementary team is a word which is used multiple times in a day. And what does diversity mean? Everybody has a different aspect to it. But I would use the word complementary. Use a complementary set of peers, yeah. And then your work-life balance, stress, and all will be in manageable proportions. Still be there. Work on your emotional quotient. Remember, nothing is going to be permanent, and this too shall pass. Get your balanced scorecard so that you can see it coming.
And who has influenced your leadership style the most?
When I joined PricewaterhouseCoopers, actually Coopers and Lybrand, PW was a separate firm. Coopers and Lybrand was a separate firm. There was a big six. Then there was Arthur Anderson. Now Arthur Anderson collapsed after Enron, and Pricewaterhouse and Coopers and Lybrand merged. So that's why you now have Big Four. But for people of my vintage, there were big sixes. So when I started as an article trainee or article clerk, as it's still called, it's a little bit of a not so likable nomenclature, article clerk, but the Institute of Chartered Accountants still has it. So I think when you meet the senior partners over there and you ask them some good questions, which I always do, you realize that there is so much of wisdom. Something I would call out is not to get impacted by every small thing. Look at the big picture. Look at the big picture. Don't get influenced or overly concerned about small things which go wrong here and there in the company where you join. Now, escalate, report. The time available for you to kind of address everything is limited. So, ignore the noise, the clutter, concentrate on the overall big picture. As and when you talk to your leaders, remember that they have limited. So, only aspects which you want to highlight to them, which is really worthwhile, do that. Otherwise, don't.
On that note, what advice would you give your younger self?
To, to my younger self, I would give advice that be ready for disruption, because disruption will be there. Those days when you do your professional qualifications, just picking a number, say at 25, and that'll survive for 35 years is long gone, long gone. Improve your emotional quotient, I think I've talked about. Don't be necessarily an inward looking person. Master your communication skills, because if you want to go and talk to a sales guy, you need to understand his language and his pain points. I would say that learning, unlearning, and relearning. So whatever you learn is no more valid. And
True.
I'll take the example of accountants. Now, the curriculum which I learned, whether it's chartered accountancy, I'm also a US CPA and a CMA, was teaching me accounting. SAP or Oracle, or for that matter, even Tally, won't allow you to post a wrong journal entry. Connect the dots, connect the interlinkages. I learned it over a period of time, but if one advice I could give to myself 32 years ago, I wish somebody had told me that your job will not just being the finance guy or the accounting guy. You have a seat at the table, make it count.
On that note, I come to the last segment, which is a little fun and engaging. It's a rapid fire with you. One word
Okay.
to describe your leadership style.
Integrative.
Book that changed your perspective.
Change my perspective. Chances are adventures in probability.
Wow, that's a good book. I'll definitely Google about it. Biggest myth about being a CXO.
That we have unlimited powers.
You are the Superman for sure. Are you strict or you flexible with the morning routine?
I would say that I'm more fixed and less flexible, unless, of course, it's a 14-hour day. So I would need
And
that 1 hour with myself to begin with, do a little bit of what gives me calmness, my own mantras and whatever else. More towards fixed, but there are days when I have to be flexible.
one skill every future leader must learn.
To be aware of what's happening all around you, moment by moment. You can't wait for your next day's pink newspaper to tell you something.
Very, very well said, sir. Awareness is the most important thing for all the leaders, and that's what LinkCxO does with its AI based platform for networking. What's your take on that, Samir, on linkcxo.com?
I think organizations like yours, take it to the next level, making sure that if somebody is probably wanting some advice, some help, because even at a CXO level, people have evolved through a different set of circumstances, exposure, it's just having a repository of the knowledge which is freely available in a manner which could them, guide them personally as well as professionally and the organization they work is a beautiful thing. I think we need more of that.
No, thank you so much, Samir. It was a highly engaging session, and to all the viewers of LinkCxO, many more such inspiring stories coming up in our episodes. Keep watching. Thank you so much.